Welcome to my channel and to my craft room. In this video, I am making a karate gi for my daughter Julia. So let's get started. So a gi is a karate uniform. Here's me before my most recent promotion. And these are some gi that I've made. Fun fact, the plural of gi is gi. So the first step in this process is to take my daughter's old gi and take a bunch of measurements from it. And then once I've done that, I can use those measurements to make alterations to the pattern that I created when I made my other daughter's gi. And here you can see my drawing with all the different pieces I need to create. And since I already have a muslin from when I created the pattern for my older daughter, I'm going to start with this. So you can see the basic construction of pants. We've got a zipper in the front, we've got a gusset between the legs to allow for plenty of movement. So I'm going to lay this out nice and flat and compare the measurements of the muslin against the measurements from Julia's old gi, and I will make the needed adjustments. Now there will also be a waistband that I will add to this later, and the waistband will have elastic in it. So this part just needs to fit comfortably over her hips. So here I am marking a line where I'm going to stitch this to bring it in on the sides, and then after I've done that I'll have her try them on, and then we'll see if there are other adjustments that need to be made to the pattern itself before I cut it out of the actual fabric. So I'll show you here how much I've taken out of the side, and I will need to make a little adjustment to the top edge to make it match up properly here. So here I've laid out the pattern piece for Grace's gi pants, and then I'm going to trace that, and I'm using yellow so it'll make it easy for me to tell which pieces belong to which pattern. And just like I created a custom pattern for Grace, now I will also have a custom pattern for Julia. Moving on, these pieces won't need to be adjusted at all, so I've just traced them exactly as they were. And then you can see my diagrams next to each other. Obviously, drawing is not my forte, but I can use these various drawings to make the adjustments that I need to the other pieces. One minor adjustment that I noticed needed to be done is that the dart in the back of the gi top should be longer than what it was. And I've taken just a little bit of width out of the pieces of the top. In the interest of fabric conservation, I decided to try and cut out the smaller pieces from some scraps that I had left over from when I made Grace's gi. And I discovered that this particular scrap of fabric here was just wide enough to cut out the back. More pieces waiting to be cut out. Moving on. Here I'm cutting out the waistband. I make it extra wide because I'm going to fold it over. And once everything is cut out, it's time to start assembly. And I will begin with the zipper extension for the pants. So first I fold it in half, and then I will stitch along that edge. And then since my serger is broken and I can't serge the raw edges, I will zigzag along them instead. And then I do the same thing to the edges of the waistband. And at this point I realized that something is wrong with this machine, so I switched to a different one, and I will figure out what's wrong with that one later. So now I'm going to work on the front of the pants, And I'm going to start by attaching the zipper extensions. So I pin those to the center front, and then I stitch those in place. So here you can see how that piece sticks out from the center front. And I'm going to top stitch just to make it nice and smooth. And here I will demonstrate how the zipper will be attached to the zipper extension piece, and then the other side will cover that up. So my zipper is pinned in place, and I will stitch along one side of that, being careful to move the zipper pull so that I can get a nice straight seam. And then I will line up the pieces and pin to the other side of the zipper. And this process takes a few minutes because you want to be careful to line everything up right. And this video is sped up 10 times because this takes a minute. And at this point I realized I messed up. So the zipper should actually be about a ½ inch lower than it is, because I forgot to account for the seam allowance where the waistband will be attached. Oops. So I fixed that problem off camera, so we can just move on. So the next task is to stitch the seam below the zipper, and I'm also going to top stitch around the zipper to give it that nice finish like pants that you buy in a store. And then I pivot and top stitch along the rest of this seam. Next I will use the zigzag stitch again along this top edge. I really need a new serger. Next I stitch the center back seam, and I actually double stitch to make it extra strong. And then I clip that curve so that there won't be any fabric bunching in this area, because that would be awkward and uncomfortable. Now that our fronts and backs are attached, it's time to add the gusset. So this piece will get pinned here between the legs, and then I'll bring that over to the machine and stitch it in place. And you can see how these pieces come together with the seam between the legs at the center of that piece. And then I stitch the other side of the gusset to the back of the pants in the same way. Next I stitch the fronts and backs of the pant legs together at the inseam, and then I top stitch along that inseam and the gusset, up one leg, down the other, and I do this to add some strength to that seam and also to give it a nice finish. Next I'm going to attach the fronts and backs at the side seams, and then I will also attach the waistband. And then once I have attached the waistband, I fold it over, right sides together, and stitch along the edge. And then I will clip off this corner and turn it right side out, and that will prevent any bunching, and then we get a nice clean corner. And I will stitch down this edge, and there will be elastic inside this waistband. So you can see that this elastic is a little narrower than the waistband itself, which is fine because when I stitch down this edge, it will take some of that width away. So I have it all pinned in place, and then I stitch it, and this is a slow, painstaking process, so this is sped up quite a bit. And here's how that looks. I added a little tag with Julia's name because her pants and Grace's look exactly the same, aside from the size. And now I'm ready to insert the elastic. So I have put safety pins on either end, and I will use those to thread it through the waistband. And I will take off this pin and put the elastic exactly where I want it, and then stitch across to hold it in place. Now that's stitched and that elastic is not going anywhere. Then I pull it through and do the same thing on the other side. Next I hem the pants, which I did after having her try them on, of course. Lastly, I will attach a hook and bar for the top closure, and these pants will be done. There they are done, and they look great if I do say so. And you can see the hook and bar closure here at the top. Moving on, we're going to get started on the top. So I have my front and back pieces here. And first thing I need to do is mark where the corners of this dart will be. And I poked holes in the pattern so that marks go through to the fabric. Once those are marked, then I'll pin them together. I've also used my ruler to connect those dots, draw a stitching line. And then I sew this dart, carefully pivoting at the corner. And I stitch right off the edge and then tie the threads together. And I press these darts toward the side seams and I'm ready to begin assembly. So I stitch the fronts and backs together at the shoulders, and apparently I lost the footage of that. But then after I do that, I fell down the seams so that they're nice and neat. Next, I will attach the sleeves. So first, I fold the sleeve piece in half to find the center, which I will mark with a pin, and then I will line that up with the shoulder seam. Once I have that all pinned in place, I will stitch it on. Next step is to stitch the side seam. So we'll start at approximately the waist and stitch up the side seam, pivoting at the armpit and then stitching down to the end of the sleeve. Next step is to hem the sides of this opening. So we stitch up one side of that opening, pivoting at the top, and stitch back down the other side. So next we have this facing, which is actually going to be doubled and then attached to the top and folded over and stitched on the right side of the fabric. So while you watch me do all these steps, I figured I would tell you a little bit about why I decided to start making videos. So I've always liked making things, and I really enjoy watching other people make things as well. So I actually draw a lot of inspiration from other YouTubers like Bernadette Banner, The Closet Historian, The Stitchery, Rachel Maxey, Prior Attire, and Coolerpa, just to name a few. And I've always had a bunch of friends who encourage me in making things and sharing them, so I decided I might like to share them with more people. Anyway, moving on. Here you'll see why I did a flat felled seam for the shoulders. In case anyone sees that seam, I want it to look nice and clean. Here you'll see the lines of stitching that I've done along that front facing. I think it gives it a nice clean finish. And then it's time to hem the sleeves. And then after that, I hem the bottom edges of the front and back of the top. And then the front of this top closes with ties on the sides. So I hem the ends of them and attach them in place so that we can tie this closed. And here's a close-up of how that looks. And then here's a picture of me with my daughters. I think they both look great in their new gi, and I kind of want to make one for myself as well. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you more than you can imagine.
If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more, please subscribe, and I'll see you next time.